Hello, everyone. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for Dr. Kari for inviting me and to all organizers. I would like also to thank our directors of the project, ERC, Aurora Perez and Martin Jansen as well. As she mentioned, this wonderful initiative to actively involve indigenous peoples in doing research of our own heritage. It is a innovative thing, but also for the indigenous people, is very much inspiring. We see a sort of hope in the future. And I would like also to show you, well, I'm part of the research group in the University of Leiden. I only have one slide. This is because I also want to thank my community in general. I don't want to present myself as an individual, but as I mentioned on yesterday, as a part of a collective of indigenous peoples. So also thanks to that collective, I am being here doing research because all those knowledge were present for me. That's why I would like just highlight that question. I am not presenting myself as an individual. Okay, having said that, I would like to go a little bit on time. First of all, I would like to clarify that my contribution will turn around on my own experience as a researcher on cultural heritage, obviously, and also as a part of the indigenous peoples collective, the Maya people. And for me, it's important to notice that most of our people barely know about our cultural heritage, either being preserved in our own communities or either in collections around the world. More than 5 centuries of colonization have been succeeding on disconnecting our people from our ancestors and their cultural legacies. The education of today does not include the Maya language, neither an education on the Maya values, but instead we have an educational program based on the Western worldview, being the Spanish language, the official language for our kids, our children, from the very beginning of their education. The Spanish language as the language of educational programs has never been a free choice for Maya peoples, but rather it has been imposed by the nation's policies according to their own strategies, including finishing with the Indian problem, as they call it. We are the problem, according to this perspective. The current program for intercultural education is actually perpetuating the linguistic colonization of our intellects. Nowadays, the problem of the language is a major concern, as well as the preservation of our cultural heritage. But honestly, these are not by far the most urgent problems for our peoples. Most of you already know the major concerns for the indigenous people from Mexico and Guatemala are the structural violence affecting us, especially women, who are the first targets of discriminatory attitudes and violence. As Maya peoples, women suffer double discriminations because of machismo and racism attacking the mothers of future generations. This is not my words, but also the words of my teacher. It is not a secret that women are the bearers of the culture in most of the societies around the world. Hence, attacking to them is also an effective way to exterminate a culture. Let us remind the feminicides in Guatemala and in the north of Mexico as a couple of examples. But there are thousands of cases within the communities that remains in the shadows of the nationalistic discourse. Sorry, according to the United Nations reports, in Mexico there are around 260,000 disappeared people. How many of them are indigenous people? How many of them are women? There are no official data from the Mexican institution, but let us recall partially Article 7 of the United Nations Declarations. Indigenous people have the collective right to live in freedom, peace, and security as distinct peoples and shall not be subjected to any act of genocide or any act of violence. Feminicide is genocide. Obviously, this also implies culturicide. On the other hand, nowadays we have mafias, military forces, the police, transnational companies interacting in a violent manner towards the Maya indigenous peoples, our cultural heritage, and towards our resources. The indigenous lands are nowadays being dispossessed from their sacredness and intrinsic values and being exploited as, in a non-sustainable way by transnational enterprises supported by the military forces and the police. This obviously is forcing our communities to migrate up to the north to survive, and lacking of the support of the security forces, the Maya indigenous people are being exposed to the mafias in the community and during the whole migration process. Sorry. So can you imagine which kind of traumatic event can produce the idea in the people, in our peoples, that the idea that the enemy is a person who wears a military costume? Even your neighbor or your relative can be the enemy. So these and other traumas are present not only in Maya communities, but also in other communities of indigenous peoples in Mexico. Some are more recent than others, but they are very similar in their violent origins. Just to keep updated, on 2014, the police violently repressed a protest of students in the communal school of Ayotzinapa. Several students were abducted, and 43 are still disappeared today. The local community started a movement to find the missed 43, and this movement had an enormous echo and support around the globe. Nevertheless, 2 days ago, on 11th of November 2015, the movement for finding the 43s was again violently repressed, and according to the news, there are other 15 students disappeared so far. So the next generations of indigenous peoples, the next generation of intellectual indigenous peoples are also on the target. Within this context of trauma, we should not be surprised on the impossibility for Maya peoples to claim for reparations on redress. But my question on yesterday was that we are not seeing the past as a traumatic, but the present is being traumatic, so we don't have also time to claim for redress or reparations. So, and as I mentioned before, there are other urgent needs, like surviving within a violent environment, similar to the state of war. Yeah, undoubtedly the violence are consequences of ongoing colonialisms, internal, transnationals, or both at the same time. So ideally we could contribute on the discussion of reparation and redress after we become decolonized peoples and live in the condition of being indigenous people, as a peoples oppressed. Before that, we can try to address the issue of materializing reparations and redress. Again, we have to confront ongoing colonization. Under these conditions, we could claim reparations. Sorry. But from who and to whom? Yeah, thank you. What's the role of the Mexican and Guatemalan states in the whole process of reparation and redress? What is the role of international community and institutions? What is the role of the former colonial powers as Spain and United Kingdom in the case of the Maya peoples? How and in which terms reparations are addressed? How to negotiate the terms on equal and decolonized conditions? What is the meaning of gender in the politics of redress? How to avoid the notion of racism injustice in the justice framework. One author, Sandy Hira, referred also that relationship between racism notions of the law. But I also would like to add that in the case of the Maya, the more self-identification you have with indigenous peoples, the worse access to justice. So reparation and redress barely appear on the far horizon. In my opinion, we could contribute to the issue by understanding the broader meaning of ongoing colonialism. What and who needs to be decolonized? In my perspective, decolonization is not a territorial issue, but we need to decolonize our minds, intellects, ontologies, epistemologies, languages, institutions, social organizations, religions, politics, economies, and a long list of etc. In the context of cultural heritage, it can be argued that the conditions for reparation of the museum's collections around the globe are impossible due to the current oppressing condition of the Maya peoples, and I completely agree with that. As a Maya, I wouldn't like to see our cultural heritage changing from hand to hand. I mean, from international museums to national institutions, and we, the Maya people, just as spectators. On the other hand, I believe that we could start the issue of reparation and redress from a less materialistic perspective. This is not just about giving back objects, which is important, but for me it's about undoing cultural colonization, and I'm going to finish. For instance, acknowledging that the Maya collections in museums, either national or international, belong to the Maya peoples. This is for me the first step, as part of our cultural heritage. Consequently, the Maya peoples have the right to maintain them, protect them, and transmit them to their future generations. This is a way to support and promote the process of self-determination on cultural development, at least. Let's recall the Article 11 of the Declaration. Other important issue is the reparation is working together. I would like to propose, a reparation working together on undoing the biased cultural representation in international museums. This already started, but I think it's a lot of things to do. Just to mention an example, I have been in a British Museum of London, and I was really shocked when I was looking at the depictions of the Maya collection. The topic was human sacrifice, bloody war, and so on. There were no scientific arguments to support that the collection were actually linked to that sort of human sacrifices and bloody depiction. Obviously, the sensationalism of that narrative had and has an enormous impact on the public. You know how savage they were, but they were the Maya, the others, So it can be understood like for a general public like an innocent statement, but imagine how children get this narrative, get this message. And now imagine how children in Mexico, the Maya children, can get this narrative as well. So there's a lot to be undone, and I think we can contribute in this way as academics. Just another example, and H0. Can I mention the last example? Okay. Yeah, I would like you to invite. I would like to invite you to see on the website as well. I insist much in this case, also in classrooms. Search for 2 words on the internet, Maya monsters, and you will find a lot of academic publications related to our deities. So how a concept of positive values can be transformed by the academia into a very negative symbols. That's the question. So for me, I think we can undo, we can repair or redress things from our own field. Thank you very much.